Amid the towering peaks of the Himalayas, a snow leopard lies near death. Its once majestic coat is matted with blood and crawling with parasites. Her once magnificent snow leopard coat, now matted and stained with a gruesome, festering infection, clung to her emaciated frame. Parasites, countless and vile, burrowed beneath her skin, their relentless feasting visible in the pulsing, suppurating sores that marred her body. Each breath was a rasping struggle, each movement a testament to her fading strength. Her eyes, usually blazing with predatory intensity, were now dull with pain, reflecting the bleak, unforgiving landscape. Beside her, huddled against a jagged rock, her cub trembled. His tiny body, barely bigger than a loaf of bread, shook not only from the biting cold, but also from the terror etched onto his innocent face. He whimpered, his small paws unable to reach his mother, unable to soothe her suffering. He watched, helpless, as the parasites continued their gruesome work, their presence palpable in the sickening stench that hung in the frigid air. He knew, with the instinctive understanding only a cub could possess, that his mother was dying. The mother's gaze, though clouded with pain, occasionally flickered toward the cub. A low growl, more a sigh than a threat, rumbled in her chest, a desperate attempt to comfort him, to assure him she was still there. But the parasites sapped her strength, robbing her of her will, leaving her only with a dull, hopeless ache. The camera panned slowly, lingering on the grotesque detail of her ravaged body, the parasitic infestation a horrifying tapestry woven across her flesh. The stark beauty of the Himalayas stood in stark contrast to the horrific scene unfolding before it. Nature's power, undone by relentless parasites. The cub, driven by a primal instinct to survive, began its desperate search for help. His tiny paws, barely able to grip the icy terrain, carried him across the unforgiving landscape. The wind whipped around him, threatening to tear him from the mountainside, but he pressed on, his small body a testament to his unwavering determination. He crawled, he stumbled, he fell, but he always got back up, his eyes fixed on a single desperate hope. Hunger gnaws at him, but fear digs deeper. He is alone. Night is falling. The cold creeps into his bones. It whispers to him, "Lay down, sleep." But he cannot. His mother is waiting. His mother is dying. His limbs grow heavy, his breath slows, his body is giving up. And yet, through the blizzard, through the howling dark, something moves. Someone is coming. The cub does not know what this shadow is, predator, savior, but it cannot run, it cannot fight, it can only beg. And so, it takes a step and collapses. Rough hands, warm hands, lifting, carrying, the storm rages on, but the small leopard cub does not feel it anymore. Only warmth, only motion, then darkness. The fire crackles, the air is warm, but inside, the small leopard cub burns with fever. And somewhere, out there, in the frozen dark, its mother is waiting. She lies in the snow, devoured from within. The parasites feast. Her body is failing, but she still waits. She still hopes. Even as the pain consumes her, the small leopard cub fully wakes. And it remembers. It must go. It must go now. It must go now. But strong hands hold it back. not to stop, to guide. Dorje, accustomed to the unforgiving nature of the mountains, recognized the urgency in Tashi's whimpers and the despair in his wide, frightened eyes. The sight was not new to him. He had seen suffering before, a wordless plea for help. Dorje, armed with ancient knowledge passed down through generations of mountain people, began the harrowing task. The wind howled a mournful dirge across the jagged peaks of the Himalayas, a relentless blizzard whipping snow into a frenzy. Dorje battled onward, his thick furs offering little respite from the biting cold. In his arms, cradled against his chest, lay the cub, its tiny body trembling violently. The cub's eyes fluttered, barely conscious, his small breath shallow puffs of white against the swirling snow. His mother was still lost somewhere ahead. Dorje had wandered off the main path, driven by the urgency of his mission, only to realize his mistake too late. The cub stirs, small and fragile in his arms. A weak nudge. "What is it, little one?" he asked. He lifts a tiny paw, nudging Dorje's sleeve. A faint motion, a deliberate one. He jumped down, then, movement. It was at that point Dorje realized that the cub was leading him in the other direction. Dorje changes his course, following the leading of the cub. His breath plumed out in ragged clouds, his boots sinking deep with each agonizing step. Dorje pushes forward, each step a battle against the relentless snow. The trail ahead is treacherous, uneven, buried beneath the storm. But he does not stop. In his arms, the cub shivers, his ice-crusted eyelashes barely blinking as he fought against the relentless onslaught of the storm and time itself. As Dorje reaches the main trail, a hazy figure takes shape through the storm. A group of hikers, faces tense with fear and uncertainty, emerges in the snow. Their figures were blurred by the blizzard, but their fear was clear. A woman clutched her companion's arm, her knuckles white and her face flushed with fear. He muttered something under his breath, but his voice got lost in the wind's roar. To them, Dorje was a madman, a figure emerging from the storm, cradling what appeared to be a predator. Their hesitant steps backward spoke volumes. Their fear was as thick as the snow. They saw only a wild man bearing a dangerous animal, not the desperate protector fighting a losing battle against the elements and death itself. But Dorje ignored them, his gaze fixed ahead, his grip tightening around the cub as he pushed forward. Dorje's breath catches, his face etched with fear. Through the blinding storm, a shape emerged. Distant, still, almost swallowed by the snow. Dorje's breath caught. Was it real, or was the blizzard playing tricks on his weary mind? She was there, half buried, unmoving. The snow clung to her fur, frozen and stiff. His heart pounded. He wanted to stop, but his feet carried him forward, toward the truth he wasn't ready to face. A snow leopard, its body swallowed by the snow, completely covered by millions of bees. They swarm over open wounds, an unsettling contrast against the white expanse. Dorje stumbled towards her, his breath catching in his throat, the sight before him a cruel twist of fate. Her once magnificent coat was matted with blood, her flesh writhing with parasites. Hundreds of them, bees, burrowing into her open wounds, their relentless activity a horrifying counterpoint to the silent, merciless landscape. The wind continued its mournful song, a soundtrack to the tragedy unfolding before Dorje's weary eyes. The wind continued its mournful song, a soundtrack to the tragedy unfolding before Dorje's weary eyes. The cub presses close. Their eyes meet, a silent exchange, a bond unbroken by distance or time. Dorje knelt beside her, his heart heavy with the weight of the situation, the knowledge that his battle was far from over. The mountains stand untouched, but the struggle here is real. A life hangs in the balance. The wind howls, the cold bites, but time does not wait. He carefully brushed away some of the snow, revealing the extent of her suffering. Her eyes, usually vibrant emeralds, were dull and clouded with pain. The bee pushes deeper, its tiny legs digging into her body, but she does not flinch. No growl, no twitch, no fight left. The sickness has drained her, leaving only stillness. A predator, now a prey. He knew he had to act quickly. The cold, the parasites, the bees, all were conspiring to steal her life. Dorje reaches down, pulling a thick cloth from his pack. He wraps it tight, shielding his face from the swarm. The stings will come, the wind will bite, but he doesn't flinch. Dorje reaches down, pulling a thick cloth from his pack. He wraps it tight, shielding his face from the swarm. The stings will come, the wind will bite, but he doesn't flinch. Dorje kneels beside her, his face wrapped against the cold. He presses a gloved hand to the fur, starting at the shoulders. The insects cling desperately, refusing to let go. But he doesn't stop. His gloved hands move with quiet urgency, swiping at the relentless swarm. Stroke by stroke, the swarm finally gives way. It reveals what lies beneath torn flesh, the battle scars of a silent war. But Dorje knows he cannot stop. This is far from over. He had limited supplies, but he had his knife, some herbs, and a small vial of potent honey. He worked swiftly, using his knife to carefully cut away the matted fur around the worst infestations, his movements precise and gentle. He applied the honey to the wounds, hoping its sweetness would lure the remaining bees away and begin to heal the infected areas. Next, he dealt with the remaining sticky parasites. With steady hands, he painstakingly removed them one by one, his touch never faltering, never harsh. He cut away the matted fur, but he did it carefully, knowing that any sudden movement might cause additional trauma to her. He then applied the herbs, their earthy scent a stark contrast to the sickly sweet smell of the honey and the buzzing of the bees. The task was arduous, each moment a battle against the elements and the relentless assault of the parasites and bees. As the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the snow-covered landscape, Dorje finished his work. Dorje trembling hands uncaps a small flask of melted snow water, and he lifts the flask to her lips. The water dribbles down, disappearing against fur and ice. The cold bites deeper as the sun sinks behind the Himalayas. He had to make a fire. He looks around and gathers what little the land offers. Fragile twigs, brittle kindling. The leopard and her cub, small, trembling, press closer to the fire, drawn to its fragile warmth. Dorje's stiff, frozen fingers fumble at the knot, untying the small leather pouch at his belt. Inside, a scrap of dried meat. Tough, scarce, but enough for the cub. Dorje kneels, pressing a scrap of dried meat to its lips. A pause. A weak attempt to swallow, then another. Slowly, the cub chews, its tiny body trembling with effort. But it eats. Dorje exhales, the weight of exhaustion pressing down. He slumps beside the cub, firelight flickering over his worn face. Sleep soon takes him, fast and unforgiving. The fire burns on, a lone defiance against the vast, endless dark. The night is over, the storm has passed. Dorje stirs, the cold still deep in his bones. As he stands, the first thing he sees is them, the mother and the cub. She shouldn't have the strength. Not yet. And still, she moves. Not to flee, not to fight, but for something else. A touch, lighter than the falling snow. No words, no grand gestures, just this. A bridge between worlds built in silence. He had expected resistance, probably death. But this, he had never prepared for. In her thanks, she had given him something more precious than survival, recognition. But she even did further. She lifted her head, her gaze meeting Dorje's. It was a silent acknowledgement of survival, a promise of healing, a testament to the enduring bond between man and animal in the face of nature's brutal indifference. The wind still howled, but now it carried a different song, one of perseverance, recognition, and survival.